Hello to whoever is watching this. I'm the Omega Protocol, also known as Keeward, and welcome to something a little different. This is completely unscripted. This is completely unprepared. It's somewhere between a rant and a discussion, because I would like to open up discussion on this topic. This is the product of a frustration that has been building up for a while. It's been a long time coming. We need to talk about storytelling in Destiny 2. And more specifically, why it is frankly atrocious. And I appreciate by having said that, I've probably triggered a good number of you if you've heard this, and I'm probably going to get more than a few angry comments that are going to stop right there and go, you're just a hater. You just hate Destiny. You would have hated. The storytelling in the past few seasons has been amazing. It's been the best storytelling ever. And you're just a hater who wants to hate on it. Where? I've no doubt I'm going to get more than a few of those. But I'm going to be blunt with you here right now. I've been a fan of this franchise for a good long while. I have loved it, and I have loved the story and the world of Destiny. Ever since that first year, even when there was next to no real story, rather more of a story framework in that first year, I fell in love with the world that Bungie had created. And I was so naively hopeful for the future. I was always a bit more of a casual player, I will say this, regarding Destiny. Let's be completely clear about my history with Destiny. Started in year one, and I was always a bit more of a casual player. I was never the most serious. I did none of the raids in Destiny 1. I think I maybe only had 2 or 3 exotics by the end. But yeah, like I said, I didn't do any of the raids, but I did play all the story content. And for me, the story and the world was the thing that kept bringing me in. I was never really all that interested in the loot. I treated it as a more casual, relaxed experience. Although I did appreciate getting the good guns. But the story was what kept drawing me in. And then Destiny 2 came out. I did play a bit of Destiny 2 year 1, but I was going through a difficult period of time at that point. Depression. And that stuck with me for a little while. Caused more than a few issues. So I missed out on all of Destiny 2 year 1. I missed out on Warmind and Curse of Osiris, on Forsaken, and a bit of the beginning of Shadowkeep. I was able to get back into the game towards the end of Season of the Undying. And I appreciate that means I missed out on a lot of experiences prior to that point. I have always wondered if I'd have reached this point sooner had I played during those times. But my depression meant that I simply wasn't playing the game and wasn't involved at that point. So when I managed to sort myself out from my depression, start putting myself back together and get myself sorted, I did start playing some Destiny 2 again. I enjoyed Shadowkeep's campaign. Annoying as the ending was, I did enjoy it, and the greater world that was being opened up a bit more by it. I enjoyed Forsaken, playing that campaign. I played all the campaigns, and while they weren't necessarily brilliant, I did enjoy them for the most part. I could definitely see why they would frustrate people, especially all of the reused story missions as strikes, but that's a topic for another time. Maybe I'll do another rant video of some kind on that, but regardless, and getting back to the main point, I didn't get to play much of Season of the Undying because I was at the tail end of it. So I have no idea how good some of the stuff I missed out on there was. And when it came to the seasons after that, I was just putting myself back together, so I wasn't fully sorted, so I ended up taking a long breather shortly after the beginning of Season of the Dawn. I think it was shortly after the first mission where you go back and meet Saint came out. So I ended up taking a breather then, got back Season of Arrivals, around the beginning of Season of Arrivals. and I've stuck with it pretty much ever since. Still a bit more of a casual player, I will fully acknowledge. But sticking with the story and the world building especially, I still loved the world building that was going on. I was excited going into Beyond Light, even with the frustration of the Destiny content vault and losing those destinations, losing Mars and the ability to do the escalation protocol and activity I loved, losing IO and its just vistas and destinations that I loved to visit every now and then and just wander around. Sad as that was, I was hopeful for the future. And going into Beyond Light, I do believe that the story was pretty good for the most part. Not the best, but pretty good. I really liked Eramis as a character, and I enjoyed the further expansions of world building on the nature of the light and darkness. And then we started getting into the seasons. And I think these seasons have really opened something up to me, something I've never truly considered. Something that wasn't as true in Destiny 1, but was still true to a degree. And was especially true in Destiny 2. For all of the time I've experienced storytelling in Destiny 2. You see, our character is not an active participant in the story. At least not the seasonal story. They are to a degree an active participant in the expansion stories, but even then it's limited. We talk almost never. And even when we do talk, it's only during the expansions, from what I can recall off the top of my head. I don't remember us speaking at all in any of the seasons. And even then, when we speak in the expansions, we speak a limited amount. Maybe a few lines. The Ghost is the one talking more than us. We're not really an active participant. Oh sure, we're the one who goes out and does the thing. You know, we slew this bad guy, we completed this objective. But it's because we were told to do it, really. For the most part. That's generally what it is. Forsaken was the closest we got really to breaking that mould. And even then, we ended up really just doing what other people were telling us to do most of the time. Our character... It feels like you could replace our character with a drone. You know, just a little drone programmed to only do what it's told to do. And little to nothing would change about the stories. Because we're not an active participant. We're a spectator. And never did this feel more apparent than what happened this week. For context, depending upon when you're hearing this, at the week I'm recording this, I don't know if I'm going to release it on the same week, I hope I do, but at the week I'm recording this, Season of the Lost is the season currently ongoing. And we reached the point in the weekly seasonal story where Crow learned about being Aldrin from Savathun. Where he went and confronted Savathun, he wanted to know more, you know? Where Crow wanted to learn more and gained Aldrin's memories. Or at least some version of his memories. We don't know the full certain details. Now, this in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad story beat to use. The problem is that our character goes up and just watches this all happen. You just stand there and watch it happen. You essentially go, oh, is that Crow being told by Savathun, the hive god of lies, to touch her crystal form and essentially open his mind directly to her? Should I do something? After all, this does sound like a bad idea. Now I'm just going to stand here dumbly and watch this happen. It's mind-boggling how someone could look at that scene and think it was a good idea. If there was something actually done to make it clear that we couldn't have intervened in some capacity, perhaps instead of actually being there when the event occurred, we could have had it so our character was too late and had to be shown this surveillance type footage type thing of some kind. It could be a magical awoken version of equivalent of it, and we see the confrontation occur. Then it would have been less frustrating. Still would have been frustrating because I believe that Crow should have been told this long before now, But it would have been significantly less frustrating. Because our character would not have physically been there to try and stop Crow and say, look, that's not the best idea. I can tell you who you were. I have enough information that I can fill in most of the details. Right? I know a lot of stuff there. If you really want to know, trust me, ask me. Don't open your mind to a known liar and manipulator. We have no idea what she'll show you, no idea how accurate it's all going to be, and we have no idea whether or not she's going to use this as an opportunity to slip something else in. But instead, we just stand there, dumbly, as if we have no agency in this story, no influence upon it. Because we don't. At the end of the day, our character is pointless. They're just a spectator to the events that occur, and occasionally a tool utilised by the characters in the story to perform actions for the sake of the story. I don't think I can truly begin to enunciate exactly how bad this is. I mean, let me be clear something here right now. Being a spectator-type character in a story is not an inherently bad thing, right? If you want a good example, in my opinion, a good example of spectator main character done well, Halo 3 ODST. That game was a really good game. And to be quite frank, the Rookie, the main character, the one we view as the main character of Halo 3 ODST, wasn't an active participant for the most part. They were a spectator. We learn through this silent protagonist that is the Rookie. We utilise him as a tool, essentially, to discover more about what happened to his ODST squad when it landed down. Every time we play as a character that is having an active impetus on the story, it is not the Rookie. The one and only exception to this is the final segment of the story, and even then, the Rookie isn't the focus. It's the other characters. Because the Rookie existed solely to be our eyes, right? The eyes through which we got to see and experience all of this. But the other characters of the squad, Bucky and the only lady Dare, and I believe it was Dare, wasn't it? It's been a while since I played ODST, so a couple of details might slip my mind. And the other characters, they were the focus of the story. Their struggle for survival in New Mombasa after the failed jump, the fight they had against the Covenant, discovering the truth about the engineers, the Uragok, I believe is the correct term in the law books. Uragok, rather, yeah. And, what the real mission of the Only Lady was and all that kind of stuff. All of that was the story. The Rookie was simply the tool we used to experience that story. The main character, quote-unquote, wasn't an active participant, but it didn't matter because the story was designed in such a way that he was never meant to be. Every important detail was focused upon another character. One who had identical personality and backstory and all these other sorts of things to flesh them out. The Rookie didn't. And so he wasn't. So like I said, with Holy 3 ODST as my example, you can tell a story where the main character is a spectator. They are not an active participant of the events. They are not the focus or anything like that. And you can tell it well. There's nothing bad with doing that. The problem is Destiny is trying to have its cake and eat it too. Right? Because in Destiny, our Guardian is supposed to be, according to all the stuff in game, this badass warrior. We have slain dark gods and cruel light-stealing tyrants. We've taken down deities of grand evil and made them into weapons we use to slay greater evils. We have disrupted the machinations of time manipulators, and we have struck against the forces of the dark. We have done all these great and wondrous things, and the things I was referencing there with regards to those particular details, that was just things like raids and story elements, not strikes, not seasonal content, and all these other details, right? And in the lore books, our character is sometimes shown doing things in such a way that would imply they are a greater character, right? Because that's what our character is supposedly meant to be. We're meant to be this big deal. We're meant to be this great and powerful warrior, this main impetus, the focus of the story, right? Like there were these great big world-changing events that are occurring around us, yes, and they are also a big deal, but our character is meant to be a focal point of the story. At least that's what Destiny makes it out to be. Doing all these grand and wondrous things. But they don't actually have any weight in the story. Because we just stand around doing jack all while things like Crow opening his mind up to the hive god of lies happens right in front of us. And we do nothing. We don't even react. And that's not even encountering all the other design flaws of that segment, such as the fact that Mara Sov is standing like just down the hall and shows no signs of having even noticed Crow going and doing that stuff, despite having been so far against it. And I get that that's most likely just a gameplay and story segregation instance, where we're meant to assume that she wasn't actually present during those events and all those sorts of things. Same with the Techians, because obviously they wouldn't just spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week standing in that hall. But when you don't even let us see this kind of thing happen in a cutscene or something like that, or at least in a specially instanced version of that area, where just temporarily while that stuff is going on, Marasov and those Techians aren't there. When you can't even do that, and you leave us with that, it creates a dissonance. But that's not the main point of what I'm getting at here. My main point of what I'm getting at here is that for all our characters meant to be this brilliant force of change and influence in the world that is capable of doing all these wondrous, incredible feats, we can't even open our mouth to say, "Oi, mate, I'm your friend, and I'm telling you, touching that thing is a bad idea." What the heck? It is beyond frustrating. And I'm not lying here when I say this. When I was playing that story stuff this week, when I was playing and I got to that point, and Crow went ahead and put his hand on that crystal, and our character did nothing, I had to restrain myself. Because if I didn't, I would have thrown my controller through my screen. Costs and anger be damned, I would have done it. Because I was frustrated so much that I no longer cared, more than a little at least, if I did property damage that harmed myself in the long run, in order to express that frustration. I had only the barest sliver of reason left at that point to stop myself. Because the frustration at getting this obvious story, quote-unquote, twist coming up, that could be resolved if our character actually had influence and could ruddy well speak. But because he can't, and he's just a mindless little drone, watching everything happen, this is a problem. This is a big problem, because so long as this is the way Bungie tells the stories, I can't feel invested in this world. And I'm certain I'm not alone here. I'm certain that there are many of you just like me, especially if you've made it to this point in the video, who know this same frustration. Because how are you supposed to feel invested in this world when this main character we're playing as, that's supposed to be the central focal point of influence of many of these events, just stands around doing nothing and just watching these things happen before them, doing nothing to help, to do the things that they would probably want to do, or to at least stop someone from doing something so mind-bogglingly stupid? When they're just little more than a mindless drone, where you could replace them with a mindless drone and nothing would really change. Because that's basically what they are already. How are you supposed to feel invested in that? How? Yeah, sure, there's the world building, but the world building means nothing if the characters within it are, great. And the main character, our Guardian, is meant to be one of those characters. Sure, there's some of the character elements in the story. There's been some interesting stuff that's happened. But how are we supposed to feel invested in that when some of it involves some stupid stuff that we should be able to stop, but can't? Not because there's actual in-story reasons for us not to be able to do so, but because the way they're telling the story creates a dissonance between the characters and our ability to interact with them. Not to mention that it's also very hard to get invested in some of the stories when you pull stuff like what happened at the end of Season of the Splicer, when Lakshmi's death occurred entirely off screen. Oh sure, we had the radio message, but that's not justifiable, Bungie. You don't tease something like that. You don't build something up like that. You don't create such a... what's the word I'm looking for here? Whatever. You don't create such a build-up. There was a particular term I wanted to use. But regardless, you don't create such a build-up and then cut out the payoff. That's just fundamentally stupid. And similarly, with something like this, you don't make out our character to be this big impetus in the story, this central focus, and then have them do nothing. I appreciate at this point I've kind of started going a bit roundabout. But I can't really think of a better way of expressing how frustrated this has all left me. Because, like I said, how can I feel the slightest bit invested when my main method of interacting with the story is merely to watch it happen? Even when I'm supposedly a character in the universe, capable of interacting with it, capable of doing things, all I'm able to do in the end is to stand there and watch it. Because I'm not really a character in the story. I'm not really capable of doing things, no matter how much they tell me I am. Because all I'm there to do is watch. And occasionally stand on the plate they tell me to stand on. I've reached a point where I can honestly say I'm stretching my limit here. I'm stretching the bounds of my limit. If something doesn't happen relatively soonish to correct this dissonant method of storytelling, I can honestly say that no matter how good the world building is, no matter how many of these cool mechanics they're going to bring out with the weapon customization and the glaives and all these other sorts of things, and the enemy guardians and all that kind of stuff, which sounds really cool, no matter how much of that cool stuff they're bringing in, I'm not going to be able to keep playing. Because like I said, to me, the thing that kept me in Destiny wasn't the gameplay, wasn't the loot. Because dear lord, there's been more than a few issues with all that. But the thing that kept me in, for as long as I've remained in, has been the storytelling and the world. But it's clear now, that's fallen heavily on the wayside, at least in terms of having our character have any influence there, which disrupts my ability to really engage in the story. And I can't really care for the world building when I know that one of the main forces of influence doesn't really have influence, especially when that force of influence is me. I'm someone who has tried to be patient and understanding regarding some of Bungie's issues. Perhaps even too patient and understanding regarding some of Bungie's issues. Regarding working under Activision, to having to deal with the bad habits they picked up from working under Activision when they finally left, to having to deal with no longer having access to all those resources. As someone who is interested in getting into game design, I can fully understand and appreciate how difficult game design can be. With what I've been researching and the game jam I participated in not too long ago, I can fully understand how even a simple game can be difficult to make. But there is a limit. There is a limit to what can be reasonably given. And I'm hitting that limit right now. I am honestly, legitimately hitting that limit. And if this keeps up, at bare minimum, I'm not going to be able to participate anymore in the seasonal stories, because that's the main problem. The expansions are also a problem, but not as much as the seasons. They're the main problem. And if it continues to remain this bad, I might not even really be able to put up with the expansions. I'm legitimately considering, for the first time in all 7 years this game has come out, actually dropping Destiny 2. Specifically Destiny 2. I'm actually finding myself thinking more and more about loading up Destiny 1 again and playing that. Maybe I'm just being overly nostalgic and I'd play that and I'd get frustrated enough to decide, no, you know what, I'm not actually going to play. But from the bits I played when I was trying to do that whole Path Beyond project a while back, I believe that it isn't just nostalgia that made me love Destiny 1 so much. It makes me look back on it fondly. Yeah. Maybe this will reach some of you. Maybe it will reach none of you. Maybe no one will make it this far in the video and you'll all have clicked off and left your angry comments and your downvotes and your dislikes or whatever is available on whichever site you're on, and you'll just say, you know nothing about what you're talking about, and you'll boot me off the aisle, as it were, for daring to question the current method of storytelling, which has received a lot of praise, and I don't really understand why. Like, they've got the world buildings kind of neat, you've got some neat little cutscenes and like, but dear freaking lord, this latest storylines has just really highlighted to me how little influence we have, how little we actually affect the story. But regardless, getting back to the point, maybe none of you will feel the way I do. But I'm willing to bet some of you do. And I don't know necessarily the best possible way for Bungie to fix this issue, because I do believe it to be an issue. I do believe it to be a serious one at that. But again, I don't know off the top of my head the best way to fix this issue. I'm not an expert. I'm very limited in my knowledge of game design, at least at the moment. So I can't offer much in the way of solutions beyond the obvious of have our character actually do things, please. I get that you're a little limited because you've got to hire, 6 different voice actors for our main character due to your decision to have us not only have different genders and races. Like, if I recall correctly, that's what they're doing. They didn't just do what I think would have been the smarter way of cutting down costs here, which would have been to have a male voice actor, a female voice actor, and then add adjustments to the voice to represent whether they were speaking as an exo or an awoken for those. I think that would have been a better way of solving the issue, rather than hiring 6 total voice actors, if I recall correctly. I might be misremembering how they handled this particular thing, but if I am remembering correctly, I do get it. You've got 6 voice actors for the main character, depending upon the chosen gender and race. And I get it, you don't want to spend as much as it will likely cost to have them record all the audio for those storyline elements. But not only do I feel certain at this point that you probably made more than enough money that you could probably afford to do this, Bungie, but to be frank, you've only got yourselves to blame for being in that position. Like I said, the smartest way of doing it would have been to limit it to just 2 voice actors to the main character, male and female, and add voice modifications based on whether they're exo or awoken, because they already happen to a degree, at least when it comes to exo, right? Add a slight effect, not a massive one, but a slight one to the awoken character, along with the obvious one for the exo character, and I think you would have done a decent enough job of creating a dissonance between the characters. But yeah. Heck, Bungie, you're the ones with control over these things. You no longer have to answer to a larger corporate entity. You could make the decision to do just what I've explained as a possibility when it comes to the main character's voice lines, assuming you've not got some fancy contract that prevents you from doing that with the other voice actors, rather than having those 4 extra voice actors. But regardless, it's getting on in time and I'm getting less and less coherent. And I think at this point my point has been made. I may not have the answers, but I believe this needs to be spoken. I believe this needs to be heard. And if I'm alone, so be it. But I'm willing to bet that I'm not. Thank you all for your patience. And for putting up with me. I'll see you guys next time on whatever it is I end up doing. Cue the outro. If you liked the video, please feel free to like the video and also feel free to comment and subscribe, or whatever alternative equivalent is available to you. If you wish to support Keyward Gaming or any other part of Keyward Entertainment, you can do so via our locals page linked below. There you gain access to all edited videos a full week in advance of all other platforms and other benefits as well. This has been the Omega Protocol signing off, and until next time, cheerio, Kinye.